Everybody, I hate to interrupt the fun conversation. I see a lot of smiling faces, so this is awesome. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of this committee of the whole meeting to order. And Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Councilmember Boland.
Here.
Councilmember Motney.
Here.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Urban.
Here.
Councilmember Ward. Here. Councilmember Crable.
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Here.
Mayor Miller Wamboy.
Here. And next item on the agenda is public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment tonight?
We do. We received public comment by email today from Chuck Hipsher. It was provided to council earlier today. And then we have 4 people registered to speak. And after you do your speech, we'll start with Tim Tilton and then move on to John Reed.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased. Thank you. Who is first?
First up is Tim Tilton.
That's right. Who said that?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'd like to address the proposed downtown redevelopment plan, which is going to be considered here in short order. First of all, I'd like to encourage, as we go through the process, to utilize the information that's been gathered over a number of years from past studies. The current proposal could greatly utilize this information to maximize the effectiveness of what we're looking to do in the future to develop our downtown. I'd like to encourage everyone to utilize our staffers being led by Mr. Gleason and Mr. Tyus and their expertise in this area. They've gone through a long process in another community very successfully, and they will be of great benefit. We'd like for our downtown to reach its full potential. To continue to support the growth and development of our downtown is paramount. We will have an opportunity with this redevelopment to maximize the potential of our community and the focus of our downtown as its center. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Who's next?
Thank you. Next up, we have John Reed, and then to follow will be Scott Steimling, and we'll finish with Jamie Matthew.
Good evening, everybody. Mayor, Councilmember Grant. It's been a long time since I spoke, but my issue is more with residential areas, more specifically Low Street. 5 months ago, Gildner came and tore up Low Street, including my driveway, my neighbor's yard, my yard. Put in the manholes incorrectly, had to tear it up, redo it, concreted over the street. Thought it was pretty much done. Next thing you know, the manhole covers are tore up, filled with hot patch. Here comes another company that scours the street. It's still not done. I've got manholes. I've got water pipes sticking 2 inches up. Pavement's not finished. And this is only 3 blocks worth of street. If it takes the city and their contractors that long to do 3 blocks worth of street. It's just ridiculous. I called my alderperson today, have not received a return phone call as to what's taking so long. I can't seem to catch anybody there. And yet this is just storm sewer. I was told by a member of Gildner that this might not help the flooding issue because they're not dealing with sanitary sewers. My question would be, when is that going to happen? And when is that in the plan? Again, it seems like now we're back to downtown with driverless trolleys and LED lights and new designs and streetscapes. Just seems misplaced priorities. Plenty of residential streets. Oakland Avenue's one. If you drive from Veterans down to Main Street, it'll jar your teeth loose, along with many other streets in this town. And I understand, I've been told many times, it's a matter of manpower. You can only do so much each year with what you have. I get that. But again, misplaced priorities. And I appreciate the fact downtown has to look nice. You've already done that once. How about we get the streets and sewers fixed first? That's all I have. That's all I want to say. See, I can be nice when I want to be, Dee. Come on. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Next up is Scott Steinling.
Scott Steinling, Ward 5. My concern is the streets are below curb line. Their place of the curb is level with the grass. The storm drains or the inlets are so low, it's dangerous to clean them out. And I was cleaning them out and saving the city a trip out, but I'll just call the city now. I would like to know when in the world these streets are going to be done. I mean, they keep being pushed back and back and back, and I've been bringing this up for over 10 years, and they still aren't done. I saw, Tim, if I recall correctly, the ADA law was effective in 1990. Since when does the city of Bloomington make up their minds which laws they want to follow, which laws they don't? You know, if somebody that late in paying their property tax, their property being got a long time ago. And you know it. And I guess the thing, there was a neighbor that was 2 blocks down. She's moved since. Her disabled granddaughter and was in a wheelchair, junior high age. She was lifting that wheelchair up over a curb. And I went down, I said, "You're out of your mind." I said, I would call, at that time, Jim Karsh was the public works director. I'd call Jim Karsh at City Hall, and that she must have done it because the city was out there the next morning to put a sidewalk in at 7:30. And it's unforgivable. Every sidewalk in this city was to be ADA accessible. Every one. The sidewalks are absolutely terrible. There was somebody out with a walker. His father since passed away. The sidewalks were so bad, they tried the roads and they were worse, and they just went back to his son's house. That speaks real well for the city of Bloomington. Let's see. Oh, the other thing is, why does the city, I know they're donated, but why does the city insist on shooting off those fireworks every year? Take that money and put it right in the roads. It does cost the city something for, additional services. And if you're saying, well, they're on staff anyway, well, yeah, but they could be doing other things other than just out at the fireworks. Yeah, there are people that enjoy them, but do you think that everything is what people enjoy? No. And I really have a problem with that. I really do. I've said all I've got to say. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Scott.
Last up, Jamie Matthew.
I've never been on this side before. I feel like I should tell a story. Like, I once caught a fish this big. So just a couple things I wanted to talk to y'all about today, just reminders. 2009, after we went through the financial crisis, the city found itself in a very bad financial situation. Hired city manager David Hales, who came in and cut 189 positions across the city. Many of those positions have still never been replaced. That's why we still find ourselves short-staffed in a lot of places like rental assistance or rental review programs, city planning, things of that nature. 2016, the state of Illinois passed a law that said that every city and every municipality needed to fund their pension plans by 90% before 2042. So 2016, the city council at the time voted and said, no, we're going to vote and we're going to fund those pension programs to 100% by 2040. There was a RAMP program that was created at that time that every year between 2016 and 2040, the amount of money that we would pay towards back pension debt would go up. This year, I think that number was 14 million in our budget. Before we get to the end, the number will be 23 million. That's 9 million more than we're spending right now. So if we've already cut all those positions, we've never filled a lot of them back in, we're short-staffed as it is. You know, we did a review in 2017 where we looked at every program that the city has, top to bottom, every single program. We discovered that most of the programs were mandated by either state or federal mandate. And most of those mandates, we were doing the absolute bare minimum we needed to comply to those. We didn't even feel comfortable about where we were at on those. We were doing the bare minimum at that time. Point being, we've already tried to cut our way into prosperity, and it's not working. We're not getting where we want to be. We can't keep cutting. If you can't cut yourself into prosperity, you're going to have to do some smart investment to get where you want to be. And I think that's a big part of where this downtown plan is and why I've been advocating for it before I ever I have self-interest in it now. And I realize that it sounds bad with me coming up here and talking to you, but the numbers don't change, right? We can't keep cutting our way. We can't talk about we've got to cut our way in. We've got to grow. The downtown TIF district that was put in place, which undid a lot of the neglect that had happened from the 60s into the 80s when the malls came to town and everybody disinvested from downtown. We stopped the worst of the rot. We stopped the building, the roofs caving in. We stopped the sewers from collapsing. We stopped a lot of that. Now with this streetscape proposal, we have the opportunity to realize what downtown could be. That previous TIF outpaced inflation by an average of 5% every year for 23 years up until it ended in 2011. If we can keep outpacing by 5% every year till then, that's how you build and invest in your future in Bloomington. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. I think that is it, correct?
Yes, no further public comment.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and it's only one item on the consent agenda, which is approval of minutes. And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve a consent agenda as presented.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Bolin. Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, Council Urban, seconded. We're doing roll call, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Councilmember Walsh.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolin.
Yes.
Councilmember Motney.
Yes.
Councilmember Becker.
Yes.
Councilmember Urban.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes. Okay, thank you. The item passes, no nays to announce. The next item is on the regular agenda, item 5A, discussion of the 2022 Youth Enrichment Program and recognitions as requested by the Human Resources Department. And City Manager,
So they're not.
did you
moving
want to
very
make comments
quickly.
before? Okay, all right.
Thank you,
All right.
Mayor and Council, and to the community. This is, I think, our third year, correct, Nicole? Okay, third year. And what the community sees right here is our future, and it's very bright. These are some of the participants in the city's youth enrichment program, a mentorship type of program, where it's far more than just a relationship with a municipal government. It's a connection to municipal government. It's considering municipal government as a possibility. Hopefully it's with the city of Bloomington. But if your journey takes you elsewhere, you know, you don't need my permission, but you've got my permission. And please, you know, please keep us in the loop. Very excited for everyone's future. Nicole, take it away.
Not going to repeat anything City Manager Gleason said. Just really excited to be here to be able to present our mentees to you. We did start in 2019 with a partnership through the Jewel Foundation, which is organized and ran by Jade and Andre Hersey. Jade is here this evening somewhere. Yep, round of applause. 2020, we added the youth program from the NAACP. So we have Dr. Carla Jackson Campbell and Linda Foster with us too. And then I don't know that we've got any of our mentors in the group. I know at least one is here, but we've had mentors across the city volunteer their time to really work with our youth. And this is just a handful of our youth. We had a total of 15 this year, and we plan to continue to grow it across the city for future years to come. And as City Manager Gleason said, these are our future. We want to expose our youth in the community to careers in government. And so I'm just very excited and kind of proud mama bear, some of them. I've worked with them for about 3 years, and it's just a really great thing. I warned them, I do want them each to introduce themselves and maybe say a few words about their experience this summer. And how do I get this out? Oh, like that. Okay, so Niall, go first.
All right. Hello, my name is Naya Shelvin. I'm a junior at Normal West. And this summer I worked at the zoo as a cashier. And it was my first experience with being in like customer service and then also working with food. And so it opened my eyes to a lot of the backhand things that people do in, service.
Hi, I'm Amaya Hersey. I'm a senior at Normal West. I've been a part of this program for 3 years. So I've first worked in HR, and then I've moved to admin, and then I was just all around doing videos. If you guys seen that video, that was me. But I did a video for the city of Bloomington, and then now I'm in the water department. And I really enjoyed the water department. I got to work with BJ and Jake, who was also another mentee. So it was a good experience getting to walk around town. So yeah.
Hello, my name is Kasaya Williams. I'm a junior at Bloomington High School. I worked within the legal department, and I'm just thankful that I got this opportunity and got to meet a lot of people that inspire me to do what I do. So thank you.
I'm BJ Dumas, and I'm a junior at Normal Community, and I worked in the water department with Amaya. And for my first job experience, I had to say it was really fun. I met a lot of people, a lot of coworkers. I've loved them. And yeah, I definitely do it again.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Bradley Ross Jackson, and I'm one of the summer interns for the city of Bloomington this year through the NAACP, and I worked in the IT department this year. And by working in IT, I gained a better understanding of technology. For example, I worked with Mr. Chris Carter and learned about wiring and how routers function. I also worked with Miss Ashley, and she taught me the importance of keeping items organized with the Fresh Service and Munis systems. I worked with Mr. Ray, and he shared his integral role with the Kyocera printers and Fresh Service. I worked with Matt, and he showed me how he runs software and computers. Last but not least, I worked with Mateus, and he shared how to create apps, websites, and other web services. He is also working on technology that can assist the blind and allow people to know when someone is out their door. Mateus also assisted me with my kindness campaign website called Be Kind. Because of his assistance, I now know how to use Wix, the website builder, and how to create a professional logo. While I was involved in this internship, I was able to win multiple awards. First, I was inducted into the National Honor Society, and I participated in the Operation Push competition and won first place. I attended Jack and Jill conventions in East St. Louis, and I won 3 awards. I also won national awards from the NAACP. During my internship, I was able to establish a healthy work-life balance. Some of you might know me as the bow tie guy, and I have another tie to add to my collection, as you can see here. I also want to thank my wonderful colleagues for this bow tie that I have on now. Roses are red and violets are blue. City of Bloomington, thanks for all that you do. Until the summer of 2023, take care and be tech savvy. Thank you.
I can't top that, so I'm just going to put the microphone back. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, council, do we have any questions or comments? Okay, well, okay, I'm just gonna make a very quick comment. First of all, I want to thank the folks who were at the inception of this particular program, Jade and Dre Hersey. Dre actually happens to work for the city. And so this is, it's a wonderful opportunity for these young people. I work at ISU in my other life, and this is a conversation that I often have with students who are unsure at times about what they want to major in and what they want their career to be. And I think, so I've always encouraged young people to participate in internships because it is an opportunity for them at the very minimum to find out the things that they might not be well suited for or the things that they do not like. But most of the time they're able to find out what they really like, and it really gives them an edge in terms of being able to move forward in their career. I've seen a number of people, and not that it's a bad thing, but changing majors a number of times, but also changing careers later in life because they realize that, well, this is not the career that I wanted, but I just did it because it was just something that allowed me to earn a living. And so I think for that reason, I think this kind of program is critical for young people to figure out what they need to do very early on in their life. And we're very thankful as well that we do not see a lot of minorities in government, particularly municipal government. So this is, hopefully you guys will take that on as a career. I think it would be wonderful because you provide another perspective that is very important for our community. So really appreciate it. So thank you all. And I know I want to also applaud the staff because I know, these young people are fantastic, but it takes time for staff, to work with them throughout the summer. So to dedicate themselves to their education. So I want to thank you all for doing that. Okay. To go ahead and move on to item 5B, which is a presentation of and discussion of the proposed downtown streetscape project concept design as requested by Public Works Department. And before we go further, I wanted to just kind of share some thoughts about my experience. First of all, I want to thank City Manager Gleason and his staff for bringing forth a plan for downtown revitalization. As you know, downtown revitalization has been the subject of many discussions for many years, and we've heard a couple of the commenters today refer to that. It even predates me as a council member, because even though I joined the council into 2011, so we've had there have been a number of discussions about this. It's certainly not my intention to rehash history tonight, because I'm sure the council would not look kindly to that. However, I just wanted to point out that a few years ago in 2017, a downtown task force was established, and that task force issued a report that identified a number of items that we should execute. In 2020, at the initiative of former council member Matthew, who is back there, the city council formally adopted the task force report, and agreed that we should focus on the action items that are low hanging fruit, and the larger, more complex items should be addressed at a later date. In 2021, around this time, we outlined as a goal for Mr. Gleason to find a way to address some of the underperforming properties in the community, which includes the downtown. So the presentation that staff will give in a few minutes is an attempt to address those larger, more complex issues. It's the beginning of a community-wide conversation, and ultimately it will be up to us as a council and representatives of the community to decide what we do and how much of it we do and how to pay for it. I'm certainly excited that we have something on the table to consider. I know this council to be thoughtful and very inquisitive in their quest to make the best decision for the community. My hope is that when it's all said and done, we would have moved the needle forward in a much more significant way. And how significant will depend on the conversations that we have, in the upcoming tonight and upcoming weeks. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason, who also has some introductory remarks to make.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening, everyone. This is an exciting night that is years in the making. Tonight's presentation is about the true next step for Bloomington's downtown. This is a culmination of the formal and informal conversations and work that have been done by many that share a passion for our large historic downtown. This is not a duplicate step. Again, this is the necessary next step. Tonight's presentation will discuss how to build the downtown streetscape. This has never occurred, and past studies, while all a part of this, do not satisfy this critical architectural and engineering next step. Bloomington's historic, large, and charming downtown is like no other. Other communities like Carmel, Indiana, Naperville, Normal, and others have been used to describe the investment those communities made in their downtown, but the similarities end there. A number of things have been held as to not duplicate or undo investment awaiting this conversation, such as permanent striping for parking, giving direction to the downtown businesses regarding outdoor dining and other items. I would not bring this $750,000 project before the council and community if I did not feel there is majority support to improve the downtown, to actually put what we pay for into action. Once the design plan is completed, the question becomes to what degree. As an example, a few million to improve the downtown square or several million to improve the entire downtown, and then at what pace? What's the schedule? My council has made it very clear that infrastructure is their number one priority. What varies amongst them is to what degree of financial investment. This is a perfect example of government being extremely public and messy at times, as it should be. We are stewards of taxpayer dollars. If approved next week and once completed 9 to 12 months from now, it becomes my responsibility to find ways to pay for a project to this magnitude. Regardless if it is all or some, the project will be in the millions. I believe there are sources of funding that will not take away from the other priorities that council has: capital projects, infrastructure, increased operational costs, etc. I would be remiss if I did not start considering a total project cost. You've heard me say $25 to $30 million as a very rough estimate for the entire project. And possible funding sources. I was waiting on you, Nick. And possible funding sources. A TIF, you've heard me comment to that. State and federal stimulus money, with East Moline recently receiving $24 million for downtown revitalization. That made the news just in the last couple of days. These are prime examples, and there's other sources out there. I do want to briefly share the process up to this point. July of 2021, so over a year ago, we sent out an RFP. That's a request for proposal. 6 firms responded. We chose to interview 3 of those firms, and CMT was overwhelmingly the choice of the interview committee. The scope of work conversations began in December. Conversations and information provided to council have brought us to tonight. Our elected are always under intense scrutiny. I ask that regardless of the ultimate vote on this matter, that the residents respect how tough some decisions are. This could be one of those. What I ask is that everybody sit back and please listen from start to finish, because this will be the first time the city has had an opportunity to tell our story in its entirety on this topic. I now turn this over to Deputy City Manager Tyus, the Assistant Public Works Director and City Engineer Craig Schonkweiler, and CMT. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. I think it goes without saying that we've got a special downtown. We really do. So as Tim talked about, a vibrant mix of residential and commercial with that historic charm that nobody wants to lose and we want to build upon. If you'll go to the next slide, please. Appreciate it. And then the next slide really quickly. If you look at the slide here, it's been a busy summer, and there's typically on any given weekend, there's something going on. More than 80 community events, which nobody's doing that. I mean, that's in our downtown. Quaint shops, larger shops, restaurants, bars, other establishments are happening in our downtown. Again, it's a great downtown. We also know that you as a council, most if not all of you want to do something, want to do more to invest in our downtown. The question becomes how and how much. The item that we're going to discuss tonight and in the coming weeks helps us to identify what that could look like and gives you an option and options for doing that. We know what you're being asked to consider in terms of this plan, but we also would ask that you, and you as a council, but also you as the public, look beyond that and let's think about what happens after this. What do we get as a result of this? And this team will talk a little bit about some of that tonight. And frankly, there are things that you as a council have talked about over the years in terms of things you want to see, and things that we've also heard from the public in terms of things that they want to see downtown. There are things like improved ADA access. There's garbage management. I mean, we've been talking about garbage, I know, since I got here 3 years ago, and probably, I'm sure before that. Having a more walkable downtown with areas for activities, new sidewalks and new seating and new lighting potentially, permanent accommodations for outdoor dining. I think it's fair to say that outdoor dining is here to stay. So this potentially gives us opportunities to accommodate that permanently versus the crowd fencing and the temporary barricades that we use now. It's worked, but it's not very attractive. And so how do we more permanently accommodate that as part of a process? Coordinated landscaping that enhances that historic charm that we talked about. The sign clutter, and cover your ears, Craig, the terrible sign clutter that we have in our downtown, giving us an opportunity to really address that comprehensively, things like that. Critical infrastructure improvements, both above ground and below ground. All those things that we know that we need to do, that you and others have said you want to do. Well, a program like this allows us to specifically identify those things and figure out what it's going to cost and give you options for taking them on if you so choose to. That's what this is about, this and much, much more. Next slide, please. We've heard the question, why here and why now? As the mayor talked about, it's about revitalization. Like I said, we've got a great downtown, but how do we take it to the next step? What do we do in order to enhance what we've already got to make it better, as you, again, and others have talked about wanting? The other thing is downtown is a neighborhood, just like other neighborhoods in our community, and it needs help. I mean, as great as it is, there are things that need to be done in our downtown currently, and we know that. This gives us a plan for doing that. The other thing I'll say is that downtowns are economic drivers. So, and I know you know all this, but it will spur additional growth. What you'll see when and if we move forward with this program, you'll see additional private investment, which again provides additional revenues for other investment in other parts of the community. Your return on investment, in our opinion, is happens faster here. So we can do all the other things, and we will in other neighborhoods. But I think we also have to make sure that we focus here as well, because it will allow us to do other things in other parts of our community that, again, you've talked about doing. We know that you'll see other investment here, and which again will provide other revenues to do other things. And so just with that, encourage everyone to really have an open mind and realize that we can do this and we can do other things as well at the same time. And so with that, I'll turn things over to Craig, and he'll introduce the team, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Billy Tice. As you folks know, I'm, can you hear me? Yeah, newly assistant Public Works Director and City Engineer. To my right is Mike Sewell from CMT. He is the project manager. To his right is Kent Massey. He's with Massey and Massey Associates, and he would be the lead designer. To his right is Chris Streisel, and he is the project principal with CMT. Next slide, please. So what is streetscaping? I thought I'd take a minute and read a definition that I think really aptly describes it. This definition is from Complete Communities website developed by the University of Delaware. Streetscaping is a term used to describe the natural and built fabric of the street, defined as the design quality of the street and its visual effect. The concept recognizes that a street is a public place where people are able to engage in various activities. Streetscapes and their visual experience largely influences public places where people interact, and it ultimately helps define a community's aesthetic quality, economic activity, health, and sustainability. A successful streetscape has multiple aspects. Because all roads have multiple users and serve many functions, each streetscape design must be context sensitive. Transportation systems must consider the context or physical setting and use design approaches and materials that are consistent with local conditions. A streetscape needs to have boundaries to ensure safe travel for all roadway users. Signs, curbs, fences, and landscaping can effectively create an inclusive yet safe environment that provides a sense of physical comfort for diverse users and activities. The aesthetic appeal elements of beautification initiatives, attractive lighting, street furniture, clean streets, and outdoor dining contribute to a town's sense of place. Amenities should be designed to get people out of their cars to socialize, interact with their environment, and discover other mobility options. What you see on the slide here, I want to highlight a few things. We selectively picked a representative sample of streetscaping. Up on the upper left is green infrastructure. That could be bioswales, rain gardens, tree and planter boxes. If we go to the upper right, we have complete streets. And what is a complete street? It's a street that provides for people that walk, people that bike, people that drive, and people that use the bus. We could also create space for public art. And parklets in the bottom middle could also provide a small seating area in a form of a former streetscape parking space. Next slide, please. So why this project? Want to acknowledge the various plan efforts to date. Want to go through the slide a little bit. The upper left is the Downtown Bloomington Strategy Plan, which was adopted by council in 2013. That plan had a lot of public input. It developed a downtown vision. It had a market assessment, a retail plan, but it also had limited streetscape information. It had an implementation strategy, but there were no costs developed in that plan. In the middle upper is the downtown streetscape lighting plan, which was prepared in 2014. This would be the closest plan to what we're talking about tonight. But it was mainly for streetlight circuits. It contains streetscaping and cost, but it limits those to mostly replacing the existing sidewalks as they exist now. On the upper right is the City of Bloomington Bicycle Master Plan, which was adopted by council in 2015 and amended in 2017, and it provides recommendations on bicycle infrastructure. The bottom left is Bring It Bloomington, City of Bloomington Comprehensive Plan 2035, which was adopted by council in 2015. And it contains a set of goals and objectives specifically for downtown. In the bottom middle is the Downtown Bloomington Task Force. And that one began in 2017 and was adopted by City Council in 2020. It expands on the downtown Bloomington strategy and establishes top priorities for downtown revitalization and redevelopment for the next 3 to 5 years. And the bottom right two slides or two images are the downtown Bloomington parking planning existing conditions prepared in 2021 and the 2019-2020 downtown parking utilization study prepared in 2020. Though both of those plans examine downtown parking conditions and utilization. Those, along with the downtown Bloomington strategy, can be used as a downtown parking framework. All of these studies get us to a certain point here. If we look at it and we talk about what the mayor said with the needle, or we look at it in a football analogy, we're probably at the 50-yard line. This plan that we're going to talk about today moves us closer to the goal line. And that's what we're talking about today. So we don't look to start from scratch. We look to build upon what's already been done, but move it forward. Next slide, please. So continuing with why this project, streetscape efforts so far have taken a piecemeal approach. The last streetscape project was the Main Street corridor in 2012. That project mostly centered on the installation of decorative streetlights, some benches, and limited ADA sidewalk upgrades. In 2019, the city undertook Front Street, but that project was not a defined streetscape project. It started as a resurfacing and an ADA sidewalk compliance project on Front between Center and Main, and it expanded to include Center and Main intersection and Main and Front intersection after it was discovered that the below ground infrastructure for the signals were in poor condition. This project also did not include streetlight upgrades. As far as development projects, with the Main Street or the Market Street garage, there's an opportunity there to incorporate streetscape elements around the site perimeter, but what are they? There's also another unknown developments or redevelopments that can occur from time to time. But are we prepared to incorporate those when we don't really know what they are? Next slide, please. So why this project? This honeycomb structure talks about the benefits. This weekend, I went through an exercise with one of my staff members, and we had brainstormed about the benefits of the project that we're bringing forward. This slide at one point had each cell blue, and we went through and looked at the past plans, thought about what we're bringing forward that the CMT team will talk about, and said, well, let's change each one to green if it's different. It's all different. Every one of those are a new thing that's not been discussed in the past. When we go through those cells, EV charging, there's a question of whether or not charging stations are needed downtown. Are they on street or are they in the parking garages or both? The state of Illinois had a funding opportunity that the city could have pursued, but we're not ready for it because we don't have a defined plan of where those EV charging stations are. This plan would provide that. Safer festival closures. What we're talking about there is going beyond construction barricades. There's a possibility here of decorative gates that physically close off the space, or bollards that are removable for installation, that provide a safe area where an errant vehicle could not get into that space and basically do harm. Downtown gateway concepts. Yes, we have a new arch and it's on the north end, but that arch, that concept can be difficult or near impossible to install on state routes over streets. And I'll show you a map later. It's also more of a challenge when you get into a wider road like Washington Street. Perhaps maybe we're looking at something like a vertical pillar that has some LED backlighting that says downtown Bloomington. Maybe there's a new median installed where that signage could be there on the entryway. What's the look and feel? We don't have that right now. Downtown boundaries, they're currently undefined. When we come across, and I think of coming across from the south where we come across the railroad overpasses, we enter in, it doesn't really say to you, hey, we're in downtown Bloomington. This plan would address that. It also would define cost, block by block, and then that would help for plan implementation. What are our downtown identities? None of the plans really address that. Do we highlight our past association with Abraham Lincoln, former president? What about Route 66? Do we use the city logo? Other kinds of things that are unique to Bloomington. Route 51 coordination. The Department of Transportation is currently involved in a study for Route 51 from Olive Street in the south up through basically Normal. They've approached us, we've talked with them. We don't have a plan that we can give them that we could incorporate in their improvements. If we had a plan, we could ask for those to be approved. Yes, the city would have to probably pay the differential for the extra amenities, but that's an opportunity that could be lost. However, though, if this plan is passed and we do go forward, we can immediately have our CMT team engage with IDOT. CMT also has a former IDOT bureau chief on their team, and that's very critical because that gentleman talks the IDOT language, and that can help us with communications with IDOT, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. What about pending utility issues? Are there utilities that should be fixed before investment is made on the surface? What about uniform colors and palettes? If we use brick banding, what colors and textures? If we use decorative sidewalks, what patterns and styles? None of the previous plans address that. What about future smart city initiatives? There is a city smart city committee that has an interest in this project. They're made of staff members. There could be a fiber network that's installed with or identified locations with this plan. There could be power feeds that could then allow for smart city initiatives, which is basically the internet connective things. So what could that be in the future? Right now, we couldn't really implement that. If we go forward with this, we can put the basically the networking below ground, which can allow for an expansion of those smart city initiatives in the future. What about grant opportunities? You know, we need a plan that positions the city for those should they arise. Last September, the state of Illinois had a downtown revitalization grant that went out. We looked at it as staff. That grant was for anywhere from 50,000 to 3 million. And but when we looked and said, well, what projects should we take forward? Well, we don't have the information that a plan such as what we're needing would provide for us to be able to apply for that funding. So that was a lost grant opportunity because we haven't moved this far enough along. We need a plan that has a consistent look and feel across all of downtown. historic protection restrictions. Much of downtown is in a historic district. That we need a plan that needs to respect that and meet historic protection guidelines. And then project phasing, what goes first? That's very important. A plan like this would tell us that. And then lastly, green infrastructure. It's difficult to incorporate into the existing space that we have now. So when we looked at this and we said, well, we really need something to move forward. We then went to what limits do we look at? Next slide, please. So we took the past plans and then we re-looked at it, and this is oriented where north is to the right and the west is up top. And we felt that the inner belt loop, which is the 51 belt loop, the inner belt loop is a focus area with Locust Street to the north and then Olive and slightly south of that, which is where the bridge starts to the south. And then we'd also look at surrounding areas west and east of the belt loop. Past plans show downtown limits farther south of Olive down to Water and Jackson. But we noted really that that's mostly a transition zone from downtown to south of Water and Jackson, which is the warehouse district. The warehouse district is not a part of this plan. On this map, you'll see a couple things that I want to highlight. The Market Street Garage is in the center right of the map. We know that that site, one way or another, is likely to be redeveloped. If it's redeveloped by code, the developer would need to upgrade the sidewalks. There's an opportunity there that we can incorporate streetscape. We don't have a consistent look and feel or an identified streetscape for that location. Center Street, as an example, has 2 lanes. Maybe that goes down to one wider lane, which then brings the curbs in, which allows for green infrastructure or outdoor space that could be used. Likewise, the old courthouse square, the county has come forth and has some initiatives there that they'd like to implement. Are we ready for that? And the answer right now is no. There is an existing gateway on Center that was installed a year or 2 ago, and then in the blue ovals would be the proposed gateways, and they mainly are on the south as you atop the railroad bridge and as you enter. They're also on Washington west and east, and then Market is a very important gateway into downtown. We don't know what those gateways would look like. This plan would define that. Next slide, please. So we've identified that we need a plan to move forward. And then we asked ourselves, well, could city staff take that on? And we have great engineers and technicians, we have great planners, but really we lack the horsepower and the related experience to make a project like this succeed. The CMT team also brings something like a traffic modeling software that we do not have. We have a traffic engineer that can review the results, but they have a sophisticated piece of software that will model the whole downtown. We also don't have any landscape architects on staff. They do in their team. We also don't have the ability to produce visuals or concepts. They do on their team. However, those city staff, we do have the people available to coordinate and manage the plan. Very much different to coordinate and manage and guide than to actually go forth with the creation of a plan. That's when we decided we needed professional services. In Illinois, per a public act, the qualification-based selection process is used for architectural and engineering services. That selection is based on qualifications. Once a firm is selected, then a scope and a fee is negotiated with that firm. We did consider the multi-year professional services list that we have, but we felt that this was a specialized project that we really wanted to receive distinct proposals. So as mentioned before, there was a request for statement of qualifications issued in July. We formed a committee, and you see that committee on the right with representatives from facilities, administration, procurement, public works, and economic and community development. We reviewed 6 proposals that were submitted. We selected 3 for interviews, brought those 3 in. They did a presentation and then we interviewed them. And out of there, Crawford Murphy and Tilly was the highest ranked firm. So I'm going to turn it over here to the Crawford Murphy team to talk to you a little bit more about what their plan is that they're proposing.
Sure. Before you do, I think we're running out of time, so I need a motion to extend time from the council.
I'll move that. We
For how-
extend time for how much do you think?
20,
30 minutes?
30? All right. Is there a second? Okay, second by Councilmember Urban. Voice vote.
Councilmember Walsh, Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Matney,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Urban,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Crable,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes. Okay, awesome. You're set. And
Well, thank you for extending the time. So, next slide, please, I think. Okay, well, again, thank you, Craig, for that introduction, and thank you guys for, allowing us or inviting us to speak here tonight, on your behalf, really. My name's Chris Stritzel. I'm Business Unit Director and a Vice President at Crawford Murphy and Tilly. And for those that may not aware of Crawford Murphy and Tilly, we're an engineering firm based in Springfield, Illinois, just about an hour south. We were founded in 1946, and we've done countless projects for, DOT agencies and municipalities just like you guys. We have about 450 employees total across 25 different offices. So we have a lot of horsepower behind us. But that being said, we tried to develop a team of professionals that we thought would be able to deliver this historic project for your community. To my left is Kent Massey. He's with Massey and Associates. They are a woman-owned landscape architecture firm based in Springfield, Illinois. We've done several projects together, Kent and I specifically. A few of those he will kind of share with you guys tonight to kind of show you what this means. So that Kent will be the lead designer on this. Workbench architects were brought in to help with the visualizations and 3D renderings. They're, as you guys should know, they're a local architecture firm here, founded maybe 5 to 10 years ago. Their office is right next to downtown. So they will be helping us with those types of things. And then there's 3 small firms at the bottom there that we're going to use for some of the data collection exercises we're going to do early on in this project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Mike Sewell will be the lead project manager for CMT. He is been with CMT for 3 or 4 years now. Prior to that, he worked at Shive Hattery here in town. So Mike lived and dined and shopped in this community for 15 plus years. And so we're bringing him back to hopefully deliver this project for you guys.
Thanks, Chris. Next slide, please. So what you see here are examples of the tools that we have used before when engaging the public. And as I
excuse me, could you get a little closer? to the
Sorry.
microphone? Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah. What you see here are examples of some of the tools that we've used to engage the public on various projects before. You guys don't need me to tell you that there's already been a lot extensive public input that's been received by you guys. If you go back to the FAR downtown Bloomington strategy and more recently the downtown Bloomington task force, it involved things like open houses and numerous design charrettes and things like that. And all of that served to inform your specific goals that you have with your comprehensive plan for downtown improvements. Our job will be to, again, engage the public. We will be validating and perhaps updating those specific goals for downtown based on the feedback that we get in conversations with you guys. We're not going to do this design in a vacuum. We'll be working hand in hand with city staff throughout the process. And there will be various opportunities to have you guys and really anybody in the community that's interested take a look at options that we've put together and receive comments and feedbacks and listen to that from them. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the basis of our project approach is the idea that we are completing the planning process. So Craig talked about getting the football from the 50-yard line across the goal line, and that's what we're doing here. To do that, as Craig mentioned, really, Craig, you stole half my talking points on this slide. We are going to be performing a lot of tasks that really haven't been studied either at all or in great detail. And I'll just suggest that that all of these different bullet points, the different tasks that we're doing will serve as the city's upfront investment to minimize the bad surprises and the costly change orders that you could run into. You find out that you've got to replace a big sewer main and dig out a lot of the improvements that you've just put in. Nobody wants that to happen. And so this is how we work with you guys to make sure that we are good stewards of the city's resources and funding. And I'll just add, Craig was talking about the funding part of that. And part of our team, we also have a woman at CMT, her name's Allie Fields, and she is a former top advisor to a congressman. And Allie has extensive experience working with communities to identify good candidates of grants for downtown improvements like this one. So she'll be an invaluable asset to our team. Next slide, please. As part of our deliverable to you guys, we will prepare detailed schematic drawings like the one that you can see here for every single block in downtown Bloomington. And there will be an associated construction cost opinion with those. We will work with city staff to develop a program of phasing all of those individual streetscaping projects in a logical manner, informed by funding available and construction considerations, things like that. But ultimately, what we will have for the city is a fully implementable plan of streetscaping for the entire downtown. And that is what you guys don't have right now. Next slide, please. Sure. Yeah, actually, if you could back up the previous slide. So there will certainly be consideration given as we work through this to some of the specific either future developments or ongoing issues that have already been identified. You can see the list there of the EV charging stations and the refuse and all of that. The old Courthouse Square project, I'll just say that I think that's a tremendous opportunity for downtown Bloomington. The one, as many assets that you guys have, the one thing that you don't have that a lot of communities have is a lot of open space, a place to bring large groups of people together for events and concerts and things like that. And so working closely with the county on the History Museum there and the work they're doing, that there's a significant opportunity there. Next slide. I'll turn it over to Kent.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Excuse me. As you can see, I'm the senior member of this team. We have been at our office for almost 50 years. It's hard to imagine. And over that time period, we've worked over 20 downtowns, either in central Illinois and into Missouri and Iowa also. So from large to small, we've almost seen it all, I would like to say, in a period of time. I'd like to first define difference between an urban planner and an urban designer. Urban planning is what a lot of the studies up here have done. And so what we're doing, Mike repeated this from Craig, is taking it the next step to an urban design, really coming down into the meat of the project and looking at it from a design standpoint. And that's where we tend to fall into that category of taking vision to reality. I wanted to To do that, it's a big part of it is to listen to all parties concerned. And I think here you have a lot of ingredients that have been done in the past, and we need to read those and listen to that, but also listen to all of the parties concerned and try to seek a common solution. That's the main thing I work with anyhow. When working with a public open space, there are 5 things I would like to highlight because that's all the fingers I have. One is accessibility. We've talked about that. That's people, bicycles, cars, buses, garbage trucks, and so on. Services, you need to have water, power, light, and everything in the downtown for not only the use of public events, but just for everyday maintenance. Durability and maintenance is very important. I've seen too many downtowns that have taken the cheap route and it falls apart fairly soon. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Sustainability, we'll get into that. This is a very key point of today's any project, is to make sure that it's sustainable and can carry on. And then the biggest thing I like to emphasize is flexibility. Too many times I see a community that boxes itself in and does a certain thing, and then it's either dated or something happens and it no longer functions. And I think we can point to several downtowns in central Illinois that went through a period of having to replace that and repair it. So anyhow, I'd like to emphasize a couple of projects that we've worked on with CM&T, both these guys. And this project is really a combination of 3 projects that was done in 2017 and 18. The emphasis for this was to get a bicentennial project done for the state of Illinois. Earlier, our firm had done a quick study on the Jackson Street corridor, which basically connects Lincoln's home to the Capitol complex. It's an underutilized street. There are 3 problems with that street corridor. First one was one of the blocks didn't even exist. It wasn't a street. It had never been platted as a street. It was never right of way or anything. So we had a big missing part in the center that didn't work. The other thing was downtown Springfield had a severe flooding problem in the downtown. Storm sewers couldn't accommodate it all. And so we had a backup and flooding situation that was pretty bad. And then the other thing we had, which is typical of many communities, is the 2 major thoroughfares that went through town, bisected this area. So to make it a really nice pedestrian corridor, which was the purpose of the study, we developed this idea of how can we treat this all the way through, knowing that it would be several years. The thing that came forward out of this early meeting was the governor wanted to do a project. So the state of Illinois wanted to do it. The governor wanted to redo the mansion and the grounds around it and the flooding problems they had. The city of Springfield wanted to do something with this 1 block in front of the governor's mansion. And then the missing block, as I referred to it, happened to be owned by one of the major lobbying groups in the state of Illinois, the Illinois Board of Realtors. All 3 kind of came together and decided we could do this project in sync. So we had 3 different clients and coordination with a very defined time limit. What we came up with was this that you see here, which is a plaza for the one area. We tore down a drive-up bank, built a plaza. It's not a street, it's a plaza. And it can be used for multi-functions. Again, flexibility was key to this. So outdoor lighting, storyboards that told the history of the town, all these ingredients kind of came together. But the big thing was it can be used in many different ways. We have anchors for tying down tents. It has been used with big screen TVs or big screen shows for concerts and parties and so on. Across the street, if we can go to the next slide. Across the street is the continuation of that. What you see there as far as the street is the 400 block of Jackson in front of the governor's mansion, which is to the right. To the left is 1 whole city block that the city over the years, starting out with the state tearing down most of the buildings, and then the city came in and tore down the rest of them. And it's been sitting there. It's been called the North Mansion block, which if you follow the press in Springfield, has been sitting there for quite a while. It's quite controversial. I'm glad to say that this week we will now be kicking off the the project that you see on the upper left-hand corner, which is to revitalize that as a public open space, not a park, but a public open space that may include several different activities that will front the mansion to the right. So this was the type of work we get into. And in the lower left, you can see how this space has already been used for the Lovett concerts the past 2 or 3 years, where we bring in thousands of people just for an evening's entertainment. Even though we don't have the development of the Y block, we do have the other. One of the things that has done, all that you see here in red and tan is permeable pavement. We've taken care of the storm drainage, which Chris can allude to. Part of the, what we call the North Mansion block, there's underground storage of stormwater. We don't have flooding anymore. We have safe pedestrian crossings, and we have the missing block now as a public thoroughfare. So one of the things I'd like to kind of end on here is that something that I kind of, my wife and I have been watching these makeover TV shows of home makeovers, and a few things really strike me that comes out of that. One is you've got to work with the bones that you have. They keep, the decorators or whatever keep talking about, you know, find out what the bones of you have. I think Bloomington has some good bones here to start out with. And then is to typically unclutter and simplify. And I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. That's very important. You want a clean looking in downtown. And the other is to bring in some color and life to the downtown and light. You know, you hear these people talk about redoing their houses, and that's one of the first things they talk about. But probably the biggest thing that struck me the other night when I was watching this was when they said, you know, we're really not doing this for us. We're really doing it for the people who will buy this or the next generation. And I think that's the key part here, is that whatever is being done in this plan is really not for we who sit here, but it's really for the next generation.
Thanks, Kent. Next slide, please. The last project we kind of wanted to share with you guys is, you know, the first two that Kent shared were close to home to us. Obviously, it's a very similar sized community to Bloomington Normal. This is a project we did for the city of Indianapolis called Georgia Street. So in 2012, Indianapolis, they hosted the Super Bowl. And as part of that pursuit, you know, they were tasked with, you know, improving the area around the stadium. So they engaged CMT to assist with this process and basically take a 3-block urban 4-lane section of road and turn it into a pedestrian friendly corridor, you know, with more green space, more active space, and a lot more spaces for people to congregate. So what you'll see here as a result, you know, not only did they, and you can kind of see it in the image on the top left, but they did some of the similar things that during that project as we did on Jackson Street, where they controlled the stormwater and the urban flooding they had down there. But they also came up with some innovative solutions that were new to the city, such as curbless streets. You know, and CMT successfully helped to navigate that process through NDOT and FHWA in order to get those by for their non-standard design guidelines. And basically there was, at the end of the day, I think 1 million people came through this 3-block stretch of street in about a week. So it was a very successful project, a lot of different moving parts. And so it kind of shows the, you know, the regional experience that our team can bring to the table, as well as, you know, some of the local hometown stuff.
Next slide. I'll talk briefly about project schedule. So as you can see from the graphic, we're basically looking at from start to finish about 12 months. 12 months might seem like a long time, but you know, for a project of this scope and all the ground we need to cover, we'll probably be moving at a pretty good clip. Generally speaking, if you broke up the schedule into quarters, the first quarter will have activities similar to team kickoffs, identifying steering committees, data collection, such as traffic counts, things like that. The middle 6 months of the project, that's where the majority of the work will be completed as far as design. A lot of the public engagement will be occurring. And then that final quarter will be where we're kind of pulling it all together, finalizing the designs, the cost opinions, doing some of that
programming of the overall program into different phases that I talked about. And then ultimately coming back and doing a presentation for you guys and laying out that deliverable for you. And that timing will position the city perfectly for implementing that first project that you break out of that plan to be that first streetscaping project, such that you could start construction on that somewhere around spring of 2024. Next slide. That's all that we have for you guys. We really appreciate your time and consideration of this. No doubt some questions have come to your mind, and we're prepared to field your questions at this time. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much for the presentation. And how much time do we have left?
So we actually have 30 minutes set aside for council
Oh,
as
okay,
well.
okay.
So we should be.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Then let's see who has questions. I know this is not a shy bunch.
If I could just really quickly, just so the gentleman at the table know, there can only be 4 mics on at a time, and then it'll start blinking green. So if it'd be okay, just as you answer to come on and off, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, oh, okay, Councilmember Crumpler.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that presentation this evening. Clearly, this is an ambitious plan, and having read through the draft proposal, I learned a lot already, and I appreciate your remarks this evening. You know, here's a question I'd like to start with. There have been 5 at least previous plans put forth. You know, and if we were to approve this proposal and spend $750,000, you know, I'm wondering about public engagement. You know, specifically, you know, things like surveys are often, they receive low percentages of return. Public meetings sometimes are poorly attended. And so I'm wondering what strategies your group has that would really ensure that there's a broad representation of public engagement about this project, because this is huge. In my ward is on the far northeast side of Bloomington. And I've already received input from folks who are concerned about, you know, the cost of this project. On the west side of Bloomington, there are people who feel like, you know, that part of Bloomington is you know, has not received some of the attention it should receive. So I'd love to hear some of the ideas you have for really getting people involved in talking about what they want and to garner support for this project.
Mr. Crumpler, if I could ask you to clarify your question, are you asking, will there be opportunities for people that want to engage to do that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, sure. Kent, I might just pass this one to you because you just have so much experience with this part of it.
I would like to say that, yes, there will be the opportunity to do that. And as we've done in other communities, I think there'll be those forums that people can speak, or other ways that, you know, we can digest different ideas and so on. One of the things I would like to kind of state with this, and I'll try to be diplomatic about it, is that we need to be able to consider a lot of things, but you don't want to spend half of the time waiting, you know, for this sort of thing. And a lot of community input has been done in these previous studies. Now, granted, some of them are a few years old, and the world has changed considerably in the past 2 years, and it'll probably considerably change in the next 2 years. So I think we need to update those and not toss them away, because there's some good information that was done by committees and a lot of public meetings and so on. So I've digested quite a bit of those reports just to get a better understanding of Bloomington. So it's really good, but I think we need to update that. And so we need to figure out a tailored way to update that public input and revise it to fit today's needs, but not spend maybe 6 months trying to do that. because I think the importance of this might be, as we were talking about with these other projects, is that usually there's some sort of a deadline. And that keeps us all moving along, if there's a deadline. So I think that's, how can we do that in an efficient way and get the public input without dragging it on and on and on, so. And there too will depend on city staff for assisting with that as far as some of the outreach sort of things, but I think it's very easy to do. Go ahead, Chris.
Councilmember Crumpler, to some of your points, I also know that today utilizing social media is an incredible way to gather input quickly and effectively, so long as we tailor our outreach to get to the types of answers that we're looking for, not the specific answers. So social media can be key to getting to people directly. The other thing we know is that you talked about public meetings that nobody comes to. Well, we know that we will also have to go where people are. You can't, one of the things the government doesn't necessarily do a great job of is soliciting input. So we know that we're going to have to go to where people are instead of saying, hey, we're going to have this meeting on this date, please come. We're going to have to get innovative and creative in terms of how we reach out to people and to make sure that we're reaching all segments of our community. Again, it's not to get a completely new set of information and data, but in updating what it is that we have, we got to make sure that we reach everybody, and we'll have to get creative in doing that. And there are ways to do that.
And I'd like to
Thank
add
you.
one more thing on that, is that sometimes during the process, you can get people to react to something more than you can just asking them point blank. It's what we call, it's easier for somebody to react to different ideas than it is to give them a blank piece of paper and say, hey, what do you want downtown? So I think during the process, there's going to be this opportunity for a lot of feedback, which is what I depend on tremendously.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I just have a few questions here. Craig, the first one's for you, because I think part of this effort here is to scope the sewers downtown. When were the sewers last scoped downtown?
We have televisation for almost all of the sewers.
Okay,
In this contract, though, we did ask them to put in about 3,000 feet. So we'll be working through that strategically, but talking with our director, Kevin Kofi, he felt pretty good about the data that we do have. And the point of this all ultimately is that this is a streetscape project and not, we're not redoing all the utility lines. But as was mentioned, we want to address the critical lines that may have to get, or could be problematic within the short term, where we don't want to have things that are built and then have to get those tore out.
okay. Kent, there was someone had made a comment that you've done over 20 downtowns. And so, and looking around at some things and looking at what's been done in Springfield and the plans for Springfield and stuff like that, I see a lot of concrete sidewalks, bricks, trees, for the streetscape itself. They all look the same. What are your thoughts on doing something that makes Bloomington different, make us not normal?
I won't touch that last comment. That's an excellent question. And over the years, things, have changed. I say we did 20 downtowns. A lot of those are small downtowns to, the whole downtown of Decatur. And a lot of this has changed over the years, and I see it changing very rapidly right now. And part of that used to be that all communities wanted to do fancy lighting schemes for their downtown. Historical light fixtures were real popular. Now we realize a lot of those aren't very efficient. They're not giving light. They're not adaptive to LED lighting and some of the other new technologies that exist. So I see that one as one area. It's hard to beat plain old concrete. Concrete can be done in nice ways and it can be brushed and other things, but it's a great surface. One of the things we have found, and I would suggest looking at Europe for a lot of this is where they've gone to some sort of a modular paving system, which allows, and some of those have been around for thousands of years. They allow pavements to be picked up, utilities worked on, pavements put back down in their same place. This is really a very sustainable way of doing things, and I think is sometimes worth the extra investment. And as we were talking about earlier today, in some cases where utility corridors are going in, the sidewalks and so on, maybe you need the sidewalks smooth for ADA and the certain part of the population, but then you can use, the modular system in other places and then be able to redo utilities. So that's one of the areas I see is happening. You'll see more and more downtowns getting away from asphalt. Anything that's petroleum based, I'm not against the asphalt companies. They have a great product, but it has a limited life. And I think the big thing that we're finding now is this kind of division between what is sidewalk, what is parking, what is roadways. And that line is now becoming very gray. And I think you'll see this in a lot of the complete streets, zero curb type situations. We're working on one over in Quincy, which is a zero curb kind of area to basically look at, how can these streets function in different ways at different times. So a lot of this is changing quite a bit from what was done, but we're far from closing the streets completely and building the replicas of malls, which so many communities did back in the 70s. I was involved in some of those, actually.
After the initial cost here, I've heard comments about, CMT has somebody who's well-versed in helping write grants. And it sounds like there were a number of things mentioned that it seems like that would be after this initial project is done. And is that all of that part of, I'll say, the continual project that it just goes on, or would all of those things be add-ons that someone would be coming back to this council and saying, oh, we need an additional 100,000, we need an additional 100,000, an additional 50,000 type of thing?
I can speak to that. So that is included in our fee as a service, is basically having Ally check in with us periodically. It makes the most sense not to wait till the end, because these things may inform each other. There may be a specific low-hanging fruit grant that comes up that might have us consider some type of improvement more so than another. Or it might be the other way around, that based on public feedback and some of the design work, we end up in a certain direction that informs her to look at certain other grants. But included in our fee is the involvement of her to research and identify and communicate as part of our team with the city on what those opportunities are. What is not included is any sort of actual grant writing, which can be fairly extensive. And as I understand it, the city has their own staff to do a lot of that already. We're certainly available to assist with that. That's probably going to be a case-by-case basis once a specific opportunity is identified.
Okay. Back to the Springfield project and then the Indianapolis project. With Springfield, and the Jackson Street corridor there, you've got going from the Lincoln Home area down Jackson, getting rid of that old YWCA building. Nice move. The governor's mansion on down to the Capitol complex. You had two anchors with something there in the middle. And then Indianapolis, the Super Bowl. I mean, we aren't hosting the Super Bowl anytime soon, I don't believe. We don't have two anchor points such as that Springfield has. What makes Bloomington downtown stand out to do this type of project to really be the draw to draw people in?
Well, I think one of the, and I think Craig mentioned this, the historical character and so it's not just one block of nice, old, cool buildings the way a lot of communities have. Downtown Bloomington has a lot of that. We've talked internally about doing what we can to reflect that historical asset down into the streetscaping, into the character of the streetscaping. That Old County Old County Courthouse, I feel like is a very, very visually interesting landmark that could serve as an anchor for some of the streetscaping projects. But yeah, there's every community is different, has different landmarks, but I think Bloomington really is blessed to have such a preserved downtown that you have.
Okay, and with that, following up right on that, with our preserved downtown, our nice old downtown. Our nice old downtown, we don't have a lot of good businessmen like Jamie over there who has been willing to invest his own cash, his own money into revitalizing a business. You know, we have some, but we have a lot of buildings downtown that, you know, need some serious work. You know, that we've got asbestos, we've got lead, lead paint, we've got lead in the plumbing, things like that. What could we do along with this project? What are your thoughts to help address that so we could help preserve those old buildings and get businesses in there, get people living in those buildings where it just may not be possible?
That part is shared by many communities right now. And I think the big thing is to make sure that your historic preservation ordinances and the way you look at codes and everything else can be tailored, again, I use that term, to address those things. And a lot of communities are working on this. We worked with Landmarks Illinois is a good example of an agency that, really does work with communities in trying to figure out methods for doing it. The other thing that drives this is market. And I think what we're seeing now is a return to urban living and people who are seeking this character. And therefore, it becomes a little more attractive for upper story rentals. And I think it's important that the community works at figuring out a way. I mean, I'm a preservationist. We live in an old house, our office is in an old building and so on. And they have problems, but those problems can be solved. But I think it takes working carefully with the codes to address some of those issues. And having a market that, makes it attractive. And I'll point to a couple of communities familiar with, being Springfield and Decatur, where there's been an emphasis on downtown living. And what you need with that is a mix. You have to have other things than just a nice apartment. You have to have a place to get coffee and all the other amenities that urban living goes with. But what those people are often seeking is a retrofitted historic structure.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Waltz, if I might,
Sure.
or super quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Couple things to that point. I can tell you that in communities that have done this type of work, I won't guarantee it, but I'll almost guarantee it, you'll start to see private investment because the investment the city makes will spur businesses that you've talked about to invest in their businesses. They will see an increase in foot traffic, which means an increase in customers, which is an increase in revenues, which again allows them to invest in their businesses. So you will start to see private investment. I will tell you without naming names, since we've been having this conversation about streetscape, we've had inquiries over the last year from people who want to know if we're going to go forward because they have an interest in our downtown. So you'll start to see that private investment. The other thing is that depending upon the financing vehicle that you as a council ultimately choose, if you choose to go forward with this, say it's a TIF district, creating that tool allows us as a city to also invest in businesses as well. So for example, say you choose to create a TIF, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, you can utilize that tool
to actually create programs to invest in businesses as well, because you'll start to see an increase in the value of the properties, which in turn creates an increment for investing in the businesses. One of the things that the manager has talked about is wanting to get inside some of these buildings and perhaps creating sprinkler programs, or perhaps creating an elevator program. Creating a tool like that, and I know nobody likes to talk about TIF, but when done right, and we can do it right, we've done it right, it allows you to also invest in these businesses with programs like that as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward and then Urban.
Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation. I'm learning a lot and I'm finding it to be really interesting. One of the things that I know about goal setting is that it's really, really helpful, not just to set goals, but it's also really helpful at times to look at how you're going to ensure that you don't succeed. And I'm curious, based on your many years of experience, and I guess I'm talking to Kent right now again, but I'm curious, how do communities sabotage projects like this? What are the minefields that we should be looking for to avoid?
That's a tough question. I think the minefields to look for in any kind of an urban project is maybe going too fast. And in some cases, I've seen too many projects where I call it something's done very quickly and it's a frill or very popular sort of thing. And then in about a few years, that tower or sign or whatever it was that, the fountains are a great focus sometimes of things that are done wrong. And, they just don't work. They're not maintained. Maintenance is going to be a key element in the success of a downtown. And too many times I've seen where they don't have the follow-up maintenance that's really required. And I'm not going to name communities, where I've seen things neglected that a lot of money was spent on. And then I've seen other communities say, if we're going to invest this much money, we're going to assign public works staff to maintain it. And that's their total responsibility is, in doing that. So I see that as probably being the key thing is the follow-up. And in some cases, and not getting too glitzy, with some of the initial work that you're tied into something. So another pitfall is flexibility, and going back to the urban malls that everybody was closing their streets and doing different things with. There was no flexibility in those. You couldn't even get fire trucks through them and emergency vehicles, which I didn't even go into tonight, is another whole ingredient now in urban planning and design.
I
Is security.
appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else have any other pitfalls that we should be avoiding?
I mean, Kent talked a lot about the design elements, but I mean, there's also the engagement elements, right? I mean, and part of the answer to, I think one of your questions was, we're going to develop a stakeholder group out of this. We don't know what some of that looks like today, right? And that's going to be city staff, and that's going to be the people in the room back here, that are the invested owners in downtown. But we're gonna get the people that are energetic about this, right? And we're gonna help, steer that. That's part of our job, is to steer that towards a common goal, right? And if we let too much outside noise and clutter and too many surveys and too many studies go about, we'll get bogged down in the details, right? We have to keep this on track. We have to keep it on schedule, and we have to keep it in budget. And that's just a fact. That's the only way this is gonna be successful.
Thank you. Councilmember Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for your presentation. I very much enjoyed it. And I just have some interesting comments and maybe some questions too. And I'm going to try and keep it under 6 minutes according to the clock. So as you're aware, there are 9 council members up here at the dais. Each one of us as a council member represents a ward within this realm, the realm of the city of Bloomington. And one could say each one of us is very dedicated to what goes on in our ward. But I have news for you. Every one of the council members that's sitting up here at this dais cares about the entire city as a whole. So they care about the people that live in their area as much as they care about what happens in our downtown. And that is very important for us to consider. And one of the things that I would point out to you is behind you, gentlemen, I see gifted artisans, decorators, commerce investors, entrepreneurs, technology experts, amongst many others. And they're sitting in this room right now because they have skin in the game. They have a vested interest in what happens in our downtown. I have a vested interest because I represent Ward 6, right? But I also know that my fellow council and my peers have a vested interest because we all represent the city. And what I would like to hear from you is a promise and an assurance that every one of those voices that is behind you, from the east to the west, from the north to the south, that you're going to hear our voices. Because where one person might want yellow and green lights, another might want red, white, and blue lights. And the important thing is that we come to a happy medium and that we're all blessed with a beautiful, vibrant downtown that can cascade throughout our entire city and make Bloomington the #1 place to go. And I really need that assurance because I'm being asked to give you $750,000 to bring me a plan. And that plan needs to be like Jurassic Park to me, spare no expense. And I'm sure lots of people are going to come after me because of tax dollars, but I apologize. I believe in what we heard at public comment. We need to invest. We need to put money in to make money. So can I have your assurance and your promise that you're going to do your absolute best to hear every one of our voices and incorporate sculpture, art, lighting, design that belongs to us that live in this city into this project?
Am I live now? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Your remarks are very refreshing to me. This isn't for us. This is for the people of Bloomington. And so of course, we're going to listen to them and consider their feedback. I believe that this is a generational project for the city of Bloomington, a generational opportunity. I think that there's real opportunity here to make the quality of the streetscaping such that this isn't just something that the people that are already happen to be downtown enjoy more. This really has the opportunity of making downtown Bloomington a regional destination, and that's going to be what rises all ships and helps the businesses and the conversations about that Jamie mentioned earlier about the growth and the economic development that can come from this. It can help things with staff shortages and all of that. It's there will always be potholes to be filled, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to anybody that comes to you and wants to see the money sent there, but it's been in all the years that I lived in Bloomington, it's so wonderful to see that there's some unity that appears to be with the council and wanting to make this forward-thinking investment for the people of Bloomington.
Okay.
I was going to add to that as an engineer, and I think Corporation Council could back me up. We're taught not to insure or assure anything, right? But I think I can guarantee you, we will promise to do everything we can to do that. And part of what I brought these manuals for, I was just telling Craig about this. I mean, this is a study we did for downtown Branson, and you don't have this, right? We've looked at everything. We turned over every stone. We talked to every individual we could. We hosted ice cream socials to get the community out, as a way to get them out, right? I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm not going to insure or assure any of that, but I think those are tools we have at our disposal. The other thing, back to Mr. Walsh's point about what makes this different, what will make Bloomington different, we can't answer that today. I think we got some ideas, but that's part of the process we're going through, is listening to these people, listening to the city staff, listening to you folks, that we can come together and agree on what is going to make Bloomington stand out from Springfield or Decatur or Branson. Right.
Oh, you're gonna put me on this. I agree with this. I tried to say in my comment that, I'm not the one that's determining this. I have to listen to people and decipher, this. And it's the key thing, and we're designers, we're not the artists. We listen to the artists in the community, we listen to the business community and the property owners and so on. And so it's a matter of bringing all this together. And I'd like to say that I think in most downtowns, we can seek compromise and not division. We found that out. And sometimes just sitting down and talking about these things, opens up new ideas to different people. The art aspect, I think, is wonderful. That's what makes certain communities their community. And I think another thing that's important about that is sometimes not having all the pieces be permanent. I mean, you're going to only have so many statues of David sitting around in Florence, but you need to have changeable spaces and areas that can fluctuate so that you keep the community dynamic. And I think you find that in successful downtowns such as Santa Fe, New Mexico, where different art is changed out all the time, and it's become a very vibrant art community as well as a living community. So it's a matter of listening and then finding the niche. And what Bloomington, and I don't know what Bloomington's niche is. I'm not sure. After living in Springfield for 40 years, I know the niche. Other than politics plays a big role in anything in Springfield, but I think it's really listening to that. And in some of these, small towns we've worked in and so on, ideas just generate, and you just have to give a place where people can, come up with those ideas. Then, we as a team work on, here's expressing those ideas into some sort of a realistic visual aspect, and then getting reaction. And people are like, this isn't quite the way we envisioned it or whatever. So it's a process. And the other thing is, it's not a one-time solution. Downtown evolves. You're going to be changing constantly. The big thing is to allow that to occur in the future in a somewhat logical way that fits the plan. That help?
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. So I think I have Councilmember Money, Bolin, and then Crable. Oh, well, I saw your light come on first, but it's fine, whichever you're, okay, sounds good.
Okay, all right. So a couple of things related to the schedule. You talked about deadlines, Ken, when you were talking about that, and you also talked about communities not taking their time, which to me, I kind of, the word impulsiveness maybe and some choices came to mind. There's an expression that work expands to whatever the deadline is. So in light of that, and in light of several of the line items that do touch on things like the sewer televising, which we do have, prior traffic studies, prior aggregation of historical properties and that sort of thing. If you were to compress this lead time for the study aspect by 50%, could you do that? And what could you leverage that has previously been done in its entirety for things such as historical property inventories, which shouldn't by their very nature change much over time?
I guess I would comment that if we took public involvement out of the equation, we can all go into a room and hammer this thing out in the time frame that you're talking about. But I feared that would just miss such a vital input that's needed to make this successful for everyone. And can I ask you, is the question posed because there's a hope to accelerate all of this to begin a construction project sooner?
Well, it's twofold. It's certainly that, and it's also the opportunity for us not to spend money duplicatively for things that we've already paid for. So as I looked at your line item descriptions, for example, your public interaction component was about 10% of the cost valuation. So not setting aside something like that, that may be, to Dee's point, kind of a cornerstone and foundational important piece. What else might you be able to do if that were just, you know, a problem statement for you to work on?
Right. Okay, I understand the question. I feel as though by reading all of the planning documents multiple times at this point, it's clear that enough enough conversations have been had, enough design charrettes and legwork to really establish what the vision is for downtown, that things like walkability need to now be prioritized, whereas traffic, vehicular traffic was prioritized before, really emphasizing opportunities for outdoor dining. But we don't need to start from scratch on this. We've got things that we'll validate again that this is the direction that the city wants to go in. But there's a plan I saw where there was an inventory of the vaults that are under a lot of the businesses that would be impacted by the streets. Anything that's there that we can use, we're going to be using. I don't believe, and Craig's had a chance to thoroughly review our proposal, that there's any duplication of efforts that aren't really necessary here.
Just to touch on the schedule real quick, you remember we started out with an 18 month. This study phase is supposed to be 18 months. Yeah, so we've already reduced it to because we've gotten off to a slow start here to try to get this delivered in 12 months for you guys. That's the goal for us for sure.
A lot of these prior studies as well actually did have tactical execution for several of the components. In your analysis to prepare your proposal, have you found elements that you could consider, given things that decisions that have already been made, implementations that have already begun, or have been fully executed in some cases, that you would leverage as opposed to starting over on those things?
Yes, so one of the planning documents that Craig talked about was a lighting master plan for downtown. And while there's some components of that now need to be updated for environmental concerns such as uplighting, night sky, that I picture us taking that set of technical documents that were in there when we do our first walkthrough and seeing what was already mapped out, and that study's a bit old, so I'm sure it'll need updating. But yeah, if there's something we can leverage, it just helps us do our job better, and that'll be the plan.
Can you tell us more about the Courthouse Square project?
And if I could start and let you all speak, we know that the team over at the museum has already started to do some work related to design there. So before we would get too far with any designs here, we would want to coordinate with them to see what they've already done, but we know that they've already done some of the work. Now, in terms of what that looks like, I can't speak to that, but we would need to coordinate with them in order to determine what would happen there. Guys, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It'll be closely coordinated so that they're not here and we're here. We have our own ideas and even visions that Kent had sketched up some things for that area. So it'll be interesting to talk with them and see where they're at. But it sure would be nice if there was, so much of it is walled off right now, and there's almost a feeling of I'm trespassing. Should I really be here? And looking for opportunities to lower that ground around the building and do things possibly with curbless street. That's where you start to create this big open areas, a tremendous opportunity for bringing so many people together. And that's just me talking. We'll have to see what their thoughts are, but yeah, that'll be hit very quickly on, so that they don't get too far without our input, and vice versa.
All next question is about maintenance. The maintenance associated with our current decisions that we've made downtown, plant beds, things of that nature. We'd be introducing additional plant material, I'm assuming, through this process. How will we balance that when there have been some critical of the maintenance for what we've already invested?
I can speak to that. The Parks and Rec Department will be integrally involved in this. I know I have had some discussions with the director. I think as we know here, we don't, or as we've started, we wouldn't know exactly where we're headed, but we have to then, as through the process, if we're adding a bunch of things that need to be maintained, then correspondingly, we'd have to have discussions with Parks and Rec and see what that would mean for those folks.
And I know we're talking about 2 years really before we would begin executing. And yet we have seen a lot of energy developing in downtown already. And, perhaps some of those gaps associated with the plant beds and things of that nature could be closed without waiting for the delivery of something like this. My last question is about your traffic modeling software that's so special. What is this product?
It's not special. It's just, there's a cost of this software that most consultants have that the city just, I don't think has at their disposal. So and it's an annual license fee. So you're probably talking at least $50,000 or $100,000 a year that we pay for this. But we do so many of these across our company that we can afford that. So it's not proprietary by any means. If it was, we wouldn't be sitting here and talking to you guys.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Councilmember Bolin, Crable, and then Becker. Last but not least.
I only have 23 seconds, 22, 21.
Oh, sure. By the way, can we, we should probably extend time. Maybe this time we're gonna do, since we only have 1, 2, 3, so we're gonna do 15 minutes.
I'll
Right?
move.
Okay. Okay, moved by Councilmember
second.
Ward. Okay, second by Councilmember Crumpler. Voice vote real quick.
Councilmember Walsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Mani,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Urban,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Crable,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm glad to see you have a deliverable from someone else. Because I really hesitate to commit $750,000 without seeing something concrete. I would like to see that if it's okay.
We'll talk with Craig about that.
Right, okay.
It was more of a, here's kind of deliverable. This is where we want to be when we're done with this,
Okay.
right?
Well, I mean, I would like to just review it if it's not proprietary.
It's not proprietary.
Okay. And then the scope also does not include the branding and the wayfinding. So I kind of would like to know what the monetary and environmental impact there will be to replace some of these elements.
I can speak to that. So, as you're aware, a couple years ago, the city undertook a wayfinding signage project. That project doesn't go away. Those signs will remain. They may get shifted here and there depending upon the streetscape outcomes, but they're not going away. That was not throwaway. They'll stay.
Okay, so but you may end up purchasing more if necessary.
Yeah, it will let the study play itself out, but the purpose of this is more of a streetscape, not necessarily wayfinding. I think the branding initiative could come out of public involvement, perhaps. Some of the things that, and Kent can talk about that with other communities, but, I've seen emblems be placed on streetlights and things like that that are unique to that community. That could come out of this. That's not the sole purpose of this, though.
Sure.
but, Yeah.
Well, I hate to cut down trees, so, that's gonna hurt, break my heart. And I also have a question, this might be to staff. Who determines the priorities in here? I know you have a recommendation for a steering committee. So who would be on the steering committee?
Yet to be determined related to the committee. However, you as a council would be integrally involved in setting those priorities. You would be heavily involved in setting those priorities. We would bring you the information to be considered, but ultimately you would be heavily involved with that.
And the steering committee? Would that be the council or is that going to be somebody else?
Yet to be determined in
That's to
terms of,
be
yes, yes.
Okay. Um,
Sorry,
Yeah.
if I may, I'll just add that the question you're asking is going to be one of the very first questions that we're asking. Because there's very different philosophies on how to go about this, and it might be what's some easy low hanging fruit to kind of show a proof of concept that we can do this, or it may be that for the first time in quite a while, there's a lot of momentum at the city at this. So what's the most impactful project that we can do right out of the gates? And so, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that priority is set.
okay. Well,
I'd like to add too, that in some communities, there's almost a tiered approach where maybe there's a steering committee and then another level of committee involvement that you want to bring in organizations and so on. So sometimes, I know in Galesburg, we used a tiered sort of approach to making decisions before it came to council.
fair enough. Alderman Ward asked about drawbacks or hangups that come along. And I know from experience, no offense to you guys back there, the downtown often has diametrically opposed views and viewpoints and what should be in downtown and all that. I would like to see maybe people from outside of the downtown also, because those are the ones that you're going to want to come, regional draw. So those people probably should have some kind of input. And one other thing, I'll end this quickly. Ever since 2014, I've been standing at that podium when all these other plans came forward and came forward and came forward. And I consistently, and I still do, advocate for modernization of the underground infrastructure, the streets, the sidewalks in the adjacent neighborhoods to make them walkable to downtown. And I will stand by that needs to be a focus, maybe even before this. Those were the comments that I've been making consistently for 5 years. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Bolin. And next is Councilmember Crable. And then Becker, and then we'll call it a day.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate everybody else's comment. I appreciate the presentation. I learned a lot, and I really feel like I know more about what this could do to improve our community. And going to what something Dee said, yeah, we're all invested. We have our awards, but we're all invested in the entire community. And and it's not just bringing people in, regionally, right? It's bringing people from our own city, downtown. I represent the southeastern part of the city, and knocking on people's doors and talking to them like, I don't go past veterans. That's downtown's dangerous. I heard a lot of that, and so to me, a downtown is the heart of a community, right? I mean, we got a lot of great stuff on veterans, but it could be anywhere veterans, right? So with that being said, with the downtown being the heart of a city, I think the, the west side, west side neighborhood, old neighborhood, is kind of the soul. And one of the things maybe Billy, you can address it because you kind of talked about it. How are we not leaving? Are we leaving out the west side? Because I know you talked a few things about this will create additional investment that we can put into other parts of the community, right? Could you directly address
Absolutely.
that kind of a question?
Absolutely. A couple things. One, there's this project, but there's also your ongoing conversation. A lot of the conversation is about roads and improving of roadways. You as a council are having a conversation about increasing the amount of funding that we put towards that type of work, which some of that would happen on the west end of town. Second thing is there are several projects already happening there. I'll reference the $13 million O'Neill Pool project. While some folks may not, I'll take that back. That's a sizable investment in the west end of our community that's going to significantly improve the quality of life for residents who live there. And we're making sure that it's going to be accessible to people. There are projects like that are also being discussed that will happen on the west end of town. So we have the conversation about roads where we're going to increase funding for that. We've had the O'Neill Pool project. There are things happening with partner organizations, the Western Avenue Community Center, who we're working with to do things on the west end of town as well, to make investments there. So there are projects happening that are either on the drawing board or are also already moving forward on the west end of town as well, because we too recognize that we need to spread the investment. One of the things that someone said, I think Councilmember Boland, you spoke to working to connect the communities on the outside of the buckle to the downtown. There are people in this community who I would imagine have never been downtown. And so part of our work with this will involve our making sure that we're connecting people directly, saying, hey, come downtown, but also as part of the process of what we're going to build, we need to hear those voices as well. We need to hear the voices of people on the west end to see what they want to see as well as part of this project. So there are things happening. There are sizable projects that are already happening. We know that there will be more as well on the west end.
Thanks, Billy. I also had a question, and it was the report that you shared with us, Craig. It has to do with ADA. And I know there's been accessibility reference, but that's more bike accessibility, pedestrian accessibility, right? But in the report, it states under ADA compliance review, ADA review for this high-level study will be limited to examining instances of noncompliance already identified by the city or areas where large-scale deficiencies are obvious. This study will not include a detailed field analysis of ADA compliance. And I don't want to have millions of dollars spent and there still be non-compliance with the ADA in our downtown.
Craig, for you all, but I want to start by saying, if you choose to go into the downtown and rebuild our sidewalks, a lot of that work will address some of the ADA concerns that we have as it relates to downtown Bloomington. A lot of the complaints that we've heard from people are about sidewalks being uneven or being sloped or those kinds of things. If you're going in and making this investment, this work by nature will address a lot of it. As we go forward and as this design happens, part of the, maybe it's not being studied, but a part of the design will also have to build in the ADA improvements that are necessary to when you do a new construction. So if you're coming in and building something new, you have to fix those things. So maybe the study isn't saying we're going to go in and study these things. Well, we already know where those areas are. So as we make these improvements, those issues by the nature of the project get fixed.
Yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit more. I realize that $750,000 is a lot of money. Part of that, though, was us driving the cost down as staff. And we were looking at different ways. This plan does not go through and do a full topographic survey, which would be basically getting the full elevation of everything. That would be done once we do the construction plans. So if there's that first project, that's when we would address the ADA component. So that in the end, when a project's built, it will be ADA compliant because we are required to do that by law. This project looks at the physical space, and let's say there's a chance to change lanes, narrow those, bring the curb in. These folks will look at what they call a PAR, which is a public access route. So they'll have to look at that. And they'll also look though at the door stops, the entry points, and try to figure out how do you get folks in? So even though what the scoping says is basically, we're not paying these folks to go through and do the full detailed analysis, but they still will need to look at that. Is that correct? Yes.
Thank you.
And when and if we build it, the issues get addressed.
Thank you. Last but not least.
I'll be
Councilmember
quick, I
Becker.
promise. I'm a Pareto's Law guy, right? I want to do the 20% of the work that gets me 80% of the results. And I believe that in every facet of everything I do, and it works. So Molly asked a good question before. She said, what are the pitfalls? Well, let's take the 20 projects that you've done in the last however long and identify the 20% of each of those that produce the most results in measurable metrics on the success of increased GDP, for lack of a better term, for that city. In other words, you tell us the top 5 projects all did this. And these were the 5 things they did that added the most value to that city's growth in support of their businesses. I have heard nothing that demonstrates these are the things that we know will drive your city's businesses to grow. I want to see some measurable comments that demonstrate the success of past projects, not just it looks good and 7 years later, it looks like Decatur again.
Boy, I apologize. I don't know that we're prepared to answer that right here on the spot, but it's a fair question. What are the concrete results that come from this kind of investment?
So you want
Sorry.
750,000, but you can't tell me where you've succeeded? That's a disappointment.
Well, I can tell you that part of the prioritization is going to be identifying where we think we're going to have the most impact. And by impact, I mean either attracting new businesses or where can we spend money to get the most immediate revitalization return for the city?
I think that, I mean, some of the pictures that we showed would hopefully tell that story. I mean, we've activated spaces. On my own, sorry. You know, we've beautified downtown. We've gotten engagement from the business holders. Just as we were downstairs talking on the way in, we successfully were awarded a grant in the city of Quincy for $2.4 million because they had a plan that was ready to be implemented. And now we're going to go to a successful project with that. So, I mean, you've got the Realtor Plaza, you know, it's the synergies between the private and the public developers, the communities.
I like
Yeah,
numbers, guys.
I can point to what you alluded to Decatur. I think it's a good example. And there's a couple other people in this room that can vouch. I think there's quite a transformation with a lot of downtown Decatur from where it was 10 years ago. Another community that we worked with, which I'd say is very obvious, the change is Jacksonville, Illinois. The square in Jacksonville was not even a square. And then, you know, they went through a major project. And almost in fact, when it was done, they said every storefront was filled. My wife and I drove around Jacksonville Square just Sunday, and I would say that almost everyone is filled. There was a couple vacancies, which post-pandemic isn't surprising. I think on Jackson Street, it's pretty obvious that probably 2 of the best restaurants in downtown Springfield now reside along Jackson Street, being Obed and Isaac's and the brewery there. And then the other one is Lukeman's by the mansion. So I think, you know, even though most of the area along there is publicly owned, at least those 2 businesses are quite successful. So I think, it doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And I think, these communities, if you don't do anything, I can tell you which way it goes.
I understand that and I appreciate that. And I'm really not trying to thump you here. I'm trying to make a point about, don't give me two examples of two restaurants. Give me numbers of 5 years after the project in Springfield. This is the increased output of the businesses in the area. This is the increased revenue. This is the increased number of jobs. Give me some data that points to the specific aspects of the plan that produce the best results, so that we can then use those to prioritize a plan that we might put forward, so that we're doing the things that give the most bang for the buck first. And then we're eliminating things that are just going to spend money. I'm a function over form guy. You probably could figure that out. You tell me, oh, I'm going to put this extra pretty planner. I couldn't care less. What I want to know is that the businesses in the downtown have people able to get to them so that they can make some more money. And that plant isn't going to make a bit of difference to me. I want the data, and I don't see enough data yet.
Sounds good. I think City Manager Gleason wanted an opportunity to speak as well, offer some comments.
Just very quickly in closing, excited about tonight. I know it's been a couple hour presentation. Fair amount of work has gone into this presentation. We're going to call this item as an action item to approve next week on Monday night. This has been the culmination again of several years of conversations. This is a priority. When I was hired here over 4 years ago, this was on my list of marching orders to address the downtown. And that's what comes before council next Monday to make that next step decision. And very much appreciate council, the community, the team in front of me, the deputy city manager, and more to come next week, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And after the closing, I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank you for your presentation and sharing your ideas and vision of how this project could work. It went a little bit longer than we not necessarily had anticipated. Actually, from my perspective, I tend to let things run a little bit long because I think when you have something this important, a project of this magnitude, it is very important for everyone to have an opportunity to ask questions. I think to me, the hallmark of projects like this, when they're successful, is a robust engagement from not only the elected officials, but also with the public. As City Manager Gleason said, this has been a long time coming. I think, with this council, in the past year, I believe we have accomplished quite a bit. And that's very important. So I like to think of this council as the, get things done council. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be asked questions that, kind of make your stomach churn a little bit, which is okay. That is part of, getting to, discernment, where you can really determine what's the best way to move forward. And I think that's what we all are trying to do up here. And I look forward to additional opportunity for discussion next week and see where we go. So thank you all very much. And with that, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which I believe is city manager discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've got, I think, a dozen slides. No, I don't. We do have a committee of the whole. We always try to recognize new employees to the city. And if you would allow me, Amy Adams, Erica, Chris Davis, Jeremy Martinez, Alejandro, Marlena, and Karen. Is there a second slide? And new BCP, actually, check out the website on this. We have quite the lineup. Parks, BCPA crew have done an excellent job of recruiting and for this concert series. So please check out artsblooming.org for the lineup. And then one more. Icebreaker Free Open Skate Festival, that's coming up this Sunday, the 21st, over lunch, 11:30 to 1:30. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I think at this point, we are going to ask for a motion.
I
to
will make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Bolin. Is there a second? Councilmember Becker. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.